Hello, and welcome to Benzinga's very special virtual event today titled Cybersecurity, a Game of Risk. Let's roll our intro for the morning and then we'll get started. I'm Matt Steinmetz. I'm Vice President of Virtual Events here at Benzinga, and I'm so pleased to be kicking off today's program. Today, we're going to host a couple of guests, very special guests, as we take a look at the state of play in the cybersecurity world. And specifically, we're going to look at how to modernize IT infrastructure. We're going to look at which organizations are most susceptible to attack and what different sectors are doing to bolster cybersecurity efforts. And so we're glad to have you all here for it. Before we get started, I want to briefly acknowledge our technology partner, Daily Hunt. Thanks to them, as always. Finally, if you enjoyed today's programming, I would urge you to learn more about upcoming Benzinga events at benzinga.com/events. We do, of course, host this live webinar at 11 a.m. every other Thursday. We're so pleased to have you with us today. So let's get today's program underway. Joining us as our host for the morning is my colleague and an editor at Benzinga, Tony Noto. Tony does a phenomenal job covering this and many other beats here at Benzinga. So welcome, Tony, and take it away.
Thank you, Matt. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for putting your faith in me and interviewing the experts we have lined up today. We're going to learn a lot. And first up is an amazing guest. His name is Koujalgi. He's the Managing Director of Equity Research at Wedbush. Our friends at Wedbush are also always very generous in providing us with the expertise that we need to bring you such great programming and points of view. So without further ado, let's bring on Taz.
Hey, Tony.
Taz, how are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for showing up. You know, this is live, so we never know. You could have just bailed at the last minute, and then we would have to improvise.
It's an honor to have to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So I would love to tee you off with just framing just how risky it is. And, you know, the title of our program is A Game of Risk. And this year teed off with two major security breaches, cyber breaches at Twitter and T-Mobile. 200 million affected at Twitter. It's probably being generous. And T-Mobile about 30 million. And just this week, in fact, yesterday, Microsoft revealed that there was a threat to their security system. That Storm 0558 acquired an inactive consumer signing key to forge tokens and access Outlook by compromising an engineer's corporate account. So what's your read of the cybersecurity landscape when you see these major companies, the biggest and the strongest, are vulnerable to cyber attacks?
Sure. Well, I guess, first of all, if you look at the impact of cybersecurity attacks, it's getting more and more expensive every single year, right? I mean, 10 years ago, when you had a breach, all you had was a few people losing their email accounts and passwords, and it was a nuisance, right? There was no impact to your business, your operations, to your money. What is happening now for the last couple of years, you actually get hit in your operations and your business, and there's a financial impact to companies that get breached or that get hacked, right? If you remember Colonial Pipeline, which was attacked about 2 years ago, you had half the U.S., or at least a major chunk of the U.S. gas stations not getting their gas for almost 2 days because they could not pump gas to their retail outlets. So the impact of attacks is becoming more and more financial, more monetary. So I think the cost of not doing enough to protect yourself is going up every single year. And what has also happened is the IT landscape has evolved from being very simplistic, having all your applications in the data center, to being more distributed. You have people now working from remote offices, from home, right, on the road. You have apps moving to the cloud. So the attack surface has expanded. 10 years ago, all you had to do was to protect your endpoint and your network. And you're fairly protected because most of your stuff was within the data center and on your laptop. Now it's so widespread. The attack points have become so much more. It's hard to protect every single, it's hard to plug every single hole in your infrastructure.
Well, I could see that with maybe a middle market firm, how much to allocate towards cyber protection. But Microsoft, it's a $2.5 trillion company now.
Yeah.
I mean, that doesn't give a lot of confidence to someone who uses the product every day, and the Outlook and the Microsoft suite is weaved into all that we do in the office. Is there an excuse for a company of that size and value?
No, I mean it's hard to argue against the fact that Microsoft has all the resources and all the technology they need to protect themselves against these attacks. And a lot of times we're seeing these attacks are not technology related; they are people related, process related. You get somebody sends an email to an employee with a bad link, and that employee not knowingly clicks on that link, and then you get breached. So it's more than just products and technology, right? It has to be, you have to cover every single base: technology, products, employees. So employee training has become a big part of cybersecurity awareness. There are companies now that specialize in training your employees in what links to click, what emails to open. So that's become another big part of security spend and security, I guess, training to protect yourself.
Well, let's talk a little bit about you. What drew you to the space, and what do you find most fascinating about it?
One thing about security that I love is the fact that it's always changing, right? The bad guys never rest.
And sometimes they win.
they win a lot of the time. So you have to play catch up. You have to play catch up a lot of the times to be able to match with their expertise. So one thing about technology is fast moving, as it is the world of software, the world of IT. But within the world of software and within the world of IT, I think security is even more faster moving. So it's very dynamic. If you look at the number of new companies being created, being funded in this space, it's a lot more dynamic, a lot more interesting than many other sectors.
So we're also looking at a lot of M&A activity, at least if you peruse the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, SentinelOne, which is a company that you cover,
Sure.
They were rumored to be for sale, a private equity firm circling them. The CEO denied it. So we don't know where that stands. And I was wondering if you heard anything through the grapevine. And if you had or had not, what do you think their situation is? Because they did lay off, I believe, 5% of their workforce. And that usually is a sign that perhaps maybe they would be exploring strategic alternatives.
Yeah, I mean, they're in a market that is fairly competitive. They are in the endpoint security space and cloud security space. You have a lot of well-funded startups in that area. You also have big companies like Microsoft and Crowdstrike who compete in that area. So they have been some challenges in the past, but they have a good product and they have a good technology. So I think their challenges are mostly distribution and scale and competing against a larger company. So I would think they would be actually well positioned if they get acquired by a bigger company with bigger distribution and bigger presence in the market. That could help them compete better against the larger players they're competing against. So do I know anything more than what the CEO said on the call? I don't. But the likelihood is pretty high given what's been happening with the company for the last few quarters, given their struggles or given the challenges in the recent past. I think they'll actually be well positioned to join hands with a bigger company that'll help them compete better in the market.
I guess it would be a matter of which company. Like, what would you advise? Say they say, Taz, what do you think we should do? And do you advise against a private equity firm and considering their track record and leveraging debt to complete those deals? Or do you say, look at a strategic like a Microsoft or a Crowdstrike?
Yeah, private equity has a rule book or a playbook to follow when they acquire companies, right? It's usually cutting costs, cutting the fat, and trying to maximize the margins or maximizing the cash flow, so they can pay down the interest for the debt they've taken on to buy these companies. Given the market that SentinelOne is competing in, I would say that will be a wrong move for a company that sector. So if I would advise the CEO, I think a strategic M&A would be better suited for the company longer term, better for their employees, better for their growth going forward. And there are many companies that I think have that these guys would make a complementary synergies with. So names like Cisco, names like even Google, for example, right? Google has been acquiring more and more security companies to bolster their cloud security efforts. So I think there are good strategics out there for which SentinelOne would make sense.
Yeah, and that leads me to my next question, which is, do you see more consolidation in the space? M&A volume has been down this year, but every day we're almost seeing like a even a startup getting acquired. Tenable just acquired a company for $265 million. Checkpoint Software was in the news today. They acquired a cybersecurity firm. So I'm just curious, how do you see the M&A volume in the second half of the year?
Yeah, so I think what's driving this is two things. One is you have private funding, sort of a little bit, not, I wouldn't say drying up, but moderating a little bit from the last, few years when you could, rates were at 0% and capital was available plenty. So that has impacted some of the private companies that are still not profitable, don't have the cash flow. So funding environment becoming a little bit tighter has led these companies to explore these options of getting acquired by larger companies. So we've seen a few private companies being acquired by larger companies. So that's one driver. On the other hand, you're seeing a consolidation from a spend perspective. When we speak to CIOs and CTOs in the industry, what we hear consistently for the last couple of years is, I cannot afford to buy so many products from so many different companies. It's just hard for me to manage so many vendor relationships, and it's hard for me to integrate all these products on my own. So there's also a trend by customers to acquire products from less and less companies. So I would rather buy a product from a company that has 20 products than buy those 20 products from 20 different vendors. So I think that's also driven by, so that's that the market going towards a consolidated spend is leading some vendors to think, what, can I make it in this market alone for the next 5-10 years? Maybe
Right.
not. So maybe I'm better served by joining a company that already has a broad portfolio, and I could be part of that portfolio, and that helps me gain traction in the market. So I think it's driven by those two factors. One, funding has been a little bit more challenging in this environment, and secondly, you have customers also deciding not to spread their money across multiple vendors, but trying to buy from less number of vendors.
What do you think of the Crowdstrike portfolio? The stock was up this year. It got hammered last year. It's been down 4% compared to last year. But this year it did pop, and the CEO, George Kurtz, was on a call today, and not today, but this week, throwing a little bit of shade. He didn't mention the company by name, but it was hinted that he was throwing a little shade at SentinelOne, making fun of their product portfolio. So I wanted to see, does he have these bragging rights, and what's your overall read of CrowdStrike?
No, I think it's a great company. They've done very well in their core endpoint security market. They're also expanding into other areas. So one of the metrics that they disclose every quarter is how many modules they have, and what has been the upsell rate of those modules. How many modules does an average customer have today? So that number has been going up today, every year, every quarter. So let's say 5 years ago, an average customer had 3 modules. I think that number now is up to like 6 or 7. So they've done a very good job of expanding their portfolio. They've done a good job of adding more customers and selling them more and more stuff. So I think, but at the same time, last year, as we saw the macro get a little bit challenging, their growth had slowed down from the middle of last year. Valuations came down, so every stock got hit last year. So that also obviously impacted them all as well. This year they've had 2 good quarters. So since they had a bad quarter, I think it was the 3Q of their last fiscal year. But since then things have stabilized. They've put up 3 good quarters. The big concern that investors have had is, if you look at the second half guide, it implies a big inflection in their momentum. But they feel pretty confident that they can make that happen because things have stabilized now. Macro has been getting slightly better from what we hear from vendors. If you heard the Okta earnings call, the Okta CEO was very positive on macro stabilizing. Zscaler was very confident that things look better now than they were looking in the last 12 months. So I think with macro getting better, Crowdstrike has a good set of products. They're a good executing company. So we feel good about them. And they have cash flow support. Remember, a lot of these companies, growth companies, don't have cash flows and margins. Crowdstrike is unique that it has growth and it also has cash flows. So they have that support, they have that floor because of having cash flows and margins. So we like the story. We like Crowdstrike in the long run.
Last question. As you know, we're in the midst of an AI boom. And I wanted to get your thoughts on what the intersection is between cybersecurity and artificial intelligence, and theoretically, how much of a competition does Microsoft present? I know Mr. Kurtz mentioned Microsoft on his call as a great competitor. What are your thoughts?
So yeah, Microsoft, even though it's not a pure play security company, if you look at the security revenues, they're probably the biggest security company on the planet.
Yeah.
I think they've been disclosing the security revenues every quarter now for the last few quarters. And if I remember, it's close to 15-20 billion now in terms of security revenue. So it's a big security company within a broader Microsoft. As far as AI, so AI does do things, right? So AI makes writing software a lot more easier. The more software we have, the more attack points we have. So
Right.
security, as we have more software and more things to attack, that is a tailwind for security because you have more things to secure. On the other hand, AI also makes finding these attacks a lot more easier because you can automate a lot more things now. Instead of having a manual analyst look at the alerts and look at their logs and find out what's happening, AI can be trained to find patterns and find anomalous behavior, which could lead you to stopping attacks. So I think AI helps security from being more effective, and also it's a tailwind in the terms that you have more software being written and deployed, which will require more security to protect that software.
Well, we can leave it at that. Taz, thank you so much for giving us the time today. Your expertise was greatly appreciated. And we will, of course, give you a call again to discuss the latest trends in cybersecurity. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tony. My pleasure. Thanks a lot.
Take care. All right, moving right along, we have our next guest. It was great that we left it off in that spot, talking about AI and the cross-section between that and cybersecurity, because our next guest is an expert in both. His name is Gomes Muffat, and he is an ethical AI expert and a cybersecurity pro. So why don't we bring him into the show? Chris, there you are.
Hey, Tony. Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you.
So first off, how do you become an AI expert so quickly? I mean, granted, we've seen AI in movies, we read about it in science fiction, but lately ChatGPT is still very, very young. It was almost this power that was recently given to consumers. How do you become an AI expert in such a short amount of time?
Tony, it's a good question, right? And trust me, it doesn't happen overnight. So personally, I started to develop software using machine learning and AI back in 2007. So 15 years ago now, or 16. And machine learning became more than that. And you had deep learning and natural language processing that altogether became AI. So one of the reason why I focused very early on my career on AI is because I was a cybersecurity engineer. Mm-hmm. And back then we had so much data to monitor and to crunch that, the human and the workload was so much that we couldn't cope with that volume of information. So this is where I started to look at, okay, how can we automate the understanding of this information and to take decision from there. And again, I started that in 2007. 2017, 10 years later, I created a company called Datena. And Datena was an AI first company that was providing a platform to identify confidential and sensitive piece of information. And by identifying this information, we were actually suggesting to our client how to protect this information. So it was very relevant for GDPR, CCPA type of regulation. This is how I came from cybersecurity to AI, I think, in a very somehow natural way. I've been doing that for a long time. And last year, I sold my company to Proofpoint. And And now I'm starting this AI lab where we focus only on AI projects, and Promptify.com and Lightos.ai are the two first projects of this lab.
Well, we heard Taz talk a little bit before about how with AI you can create more software much more quickly and easier, but with that you open yourself up to more cybersecurity vulnerability. And I wanted to, one, ask if you agree and if you see it that way, and two, what should companies like Microsoft keep in mind as they explore artificial intelligence? You know, in the call that they were on for Q4 earnings, I think it was in late July, they mentioned mentioned AI like 175 times, and so they're not bored by it.
Yeah. Listen, I think, are we going to have more cybersecurity problem in the future? Yes, most likely. Because of AI, yes and no, we produce more digital assets through AI. But I must say that that's not my biggest concern, to have, more vulnerabilities that we already have. What we currently have is just so big. We have so many vulnerabilities. Every day you have a hacking story, like, this company got hacked, and you have 0-day vulnerability disclosed definitely on a daily basis. So, this will keep happening. What I'm more concerned about, though, is that generative AI is now a tool to perform attack at scale. So even if I'm 12 years old, student grad or whatever, I don't really have a lot of computer science knowledge. If I use a tool like Hack GPT or something like that, then I can launch like a massive attack on organization, government, people. And I think that is the biggest threat, because it's essentially, allowing people to have access to nuclear weapon to everyone. And from an ethical standpoint, I believe that government needs to step up rapidly. I believe that we should be authorized to use AI. Organizations should get a license. Honestly, the same way financial services today, if you want to be a bank, you cannot say like, hey, I'm a bank. No, you need to go through a process. You need to be licensed. There's regulation, there's control. This is the exact same for AI. If we want to have a safe AI, we need to regulate AI, and we need to really require organizations to get a license to operate AI.
So do you think that our elected officials should use cybersecurity as a reason for more regulation and AI, more AI rules and regulation going forward? I don't think, maybe the Hollywood studios might have an issue with that.
Yeah, I mean, I had a few discussions about that in the past, but I think, look, in a nutshell, what is important to remember is what is the benefit for people? What are we trying to achieve, right? We want to be able to produce very qualitative content to increase productivity drastically. Like personally, what I want as an individual is I want to be able to work less and make more money. That's a simple equation. So productivity is something that people want. Now the government needs to really step up and not have a look at the cybersecurity aspect of AI. Yes, but I mean, cybersecurity is a problem, but the biggest problem is ethics. It's simply, you have cybersecurity issue, definitely, but you have also misinformation, fake news, deep fake, all that. These are very serious threats. And I think it's not limited to cybersecurity. And I believe that government should step up and come up with ethical framework to regulate the company that design AI and the company that use AI.
What was it like working with Proofpoint? Like you said earlier, you sold your company to Proofpoint, which is one of the largest cybersecurity firms in the U.S. What was it like courting them, and what did they have to say about the work you've done?
Oh, I don't know. You have to ask them. But I think the Proofpoint is a very robust cybersecurity company in the way that they have a very large catalog of solutions to address both external threats and internal threats. So let's put it this way: Proofpoint is great to protect outside of your house and inside of your house. And they are becoming really like a one-stop shop for cybersecurity and data protection. And they offer an alternative to Microsoft and Google, right? If you are a large organization, you certainly don't want to put your eggs in one basket. So I would say that, Proofpoint is one of these key players right now that is emerging. And there's a culture of innovation, so innovation happens through R&D, and they have an amazing R&D team, but also through acquisition. And that's why they acquired us, because we have done AI for cybersecurity since 2017. We were using NVIDIA and GPUs even back then, Yeah. So I think because they have a very clear understanding of what the client needs, where the market is going, I think they've been very smart in understanding that, okay, we need to acquire AI capabilities, and this is what they've done when they acquired Datina. And
now they're owned by Thoma Bravo. So you guys are sort of a bolt-on acquisition for Proofpoint, and it makes sense that they're likely going to circle more companies like yours or like the ones you founded.
I suspect that. I mean, I'm not working for Proofpoint anymore, but I believe that they're gonna acquire more company in the cybersecurity space, and I'll be very surprised if they don't do that.
Yeah. Well, then you pivoted to AI, Promptify. Let's talk a little bit about that. And do you consider Promptify as a up-and-coming rival to ChatGPT?
No, not necessarily. I think the idea is not to compete with ChatGPT, but rather to provide a one-stop shop for generative AI. Look, the truth is, if you look at the future of LLM, large language model, and AI in general, it's very likely that you won't have one AI the same way you have one Google that manage everything, right? I believe that we're going to have a lot of open source model, LLM, and that's why Hugging Face had so much is so trendy recently, because you see that the open source model that Meta, by the way, contributed to with Llama are competing with OpenAI, and I believe that the future of LLM is open source. So when you understand that, what does it mean for Promptify? Promptify is not another tool that will create another LLM. There's enough LLM on the market, private, public. You have Llama, you have Falcon, you have OpenAI, you have Claude from Anthropic. We don't want to be another one, right? But rather we want to be a broker, because the question is like, okay, now I have 1,000 LLM to use or AI to use. Which one should I use, really? So, you're not going to have like 1,000 application and whatnot. So the idea is to have a one-stop shop, and then we route you to the best AI based on your objectives, your personality, based on what you want to do. Essentially, it's just that. It's a platform to access to all generative AI available on the internet.
So you're currently on the funding trail for Promptify, correct? How much are you looking to raise? And for any VCs out there watching this, what should they know about Promptify and the road you're on right now?
Well, I think from a funding perspective, I mean, I'm bootstrapping the company. We have a really good start. We had more than 100,000 visitors last month, it was just the first month. So we'll see how it goes. I'm very curious to see when we're gonna have stickiness, because not only the product needs to be adopted, but also people should use it, every day. So until until we reach these metrics of, customer acquisition and stickiness, and we have a confirmed adoption, then we will raise. So given the trend that we have, I think, it's likely that we're going to be able to raise in 6 to 12 months, more or less. But we'll see about that.
Well, before we go, I want to ask you just one more question about something we've been seeing pop up in the news, which is the writer's strike and the actor's strike that's going on in Hollywood. You had a lot to say about it as an AI expert. And I imagine you have still have a lot to say. And I read something that you wrote that you think that, we might not need screenwriters in the future, that it's less about a screenwriter's ability to write and more about the questions that they ask that will craft stories going forward. And your ability to be a good writer, you said, will not be in producing the right content, but rather asking the right questions.
Exactly.
So I have to admit, I was a little part of me died when I read that as a writer myself and someone who appreciates
I'm
film.
sorry, Tony.
But is that? Do you think that as an ethical AI expert, do you think that is a future you want to be in? I mean, we saw Under Armour come up with a commercial recently that they were proudly boasting was written entirely using AI. Granted, we're still in that first inning in AI development, but the commercial, in my opinion, and from what I've read, it wasn't very good. So it's like, are we just shouldn't our standards be a little bit higher?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I have since last time, a funny story. My sister, my younger sister, Lily, she's a screenwriter, actually.
Oh.
And I hired her, and she's the one that crafts all the templates for Promptify.com.
Okay.
And it's very interesting because I was discussing with her this morning, and she started to understand that, okay, I'm not going to be replaced, but rather my job will change, because my ability to write or to produce content will be purely based on my ability to craft sophisticated prompt, right? and be able to carefully select which AI I'm gonna use. So if you think about it, it's like a chef or a cook, that does the same thing. It just cherry pick that, and I think people shouldn't be worried too much about not having a job. They should rather worry to be left aside because they don't learn to adopt these new type of technologies.
But will it be as good as it can be? Like, will you get, say, like the Under Armour speech in the locker room to a team, compare that from an AI versus what Oliver Stone wrote in Any Given Sunday? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. I think it's a really good question, and I don't think there's a yes and no answer to that, because it really depends on whether or not the AI will become smarter or dumber, over time, and we've seen that, right? So I'm gonna say that you will have certain organization that will know exactly how to use AI and prompt AI, that will have an exceptional content creation. Then you will have people that have less knowledge and will use AI poorly, and then the content will be poor as well. So there's this duality. I wouldn't say that everything is going to be amazing. No, I think you're going to have a lot of very, very good, right, and you're going to have a lot of very, very bad.
Well, if I was Fran Drescher, I would try to march and picket in front of Redmond, Washington, instead of Burbank, where Disney is. But it's not up to me. Chris, this was a really great conversation. I'm certainly glad that you joined us for Cybersecurity, Game of Risk, the latest Benzinga webinar. Please come again and join us.
Anytime.
For all of our, whenever we need expertise, you will be at the top of my list.
Amazing. Thanks a lot, Tony.
Take care. Have a great day.
Bye.
All right. Well, I'm going to kick it back to Matt for our closing statements. Matt, what did you think?
Well done as always, Tony. Terrific job. Thank you very much, sir.
It was interesting how 90% of it about cybersecurity, but there's this silent passenger, artificial intelligence, that not a lot of people pair it with cybersecurity. And I think we're headed in that direction. So I hope our listeners and our viewers enjoyed that last little bit there, because it's an important topic.
Silent passenger. That's good. That's good. Well done as always, Tony. Thank you again.
Take care.
And thank you as well to our terrific guests today, Taz and Chris, for sharing their deep expertise and their analysis with us throughout today's event. One more big thank you to our technology partners at Daily Hunt. And finally, a big thank you to all of you for giving us your time and your attention today. Be sure to check out all of our upcoming events, both in person and virtual, at benzinga.com/events. From the entire team here at Benzinga, we thank you for joining us. We hope to see you at another event real soon. Until then, be well.